Every master eventually meets the one fight that strips him down to nothing. Hong Kong, 1972. A man walks into a warehouse on the Kowloon docks. No cameras. No crowd. Just 11 figures seated in silence. 11 of Asia's most dangerous grandmasters. They are not here to fight. They are here to watch. In the center stands a nameless fighter. No style. No school. No defeats. He has destroyed masters of every known discipline. The man who steps forward to face him is Bruce Lee. But for the first time in his life, speed is not enough. Technique is not enough. Everything he believes about fighting is useless. He is pushed to the brink of destruction. The only way to survive is to abandon everything he has known. What happens in those 4 minutes that none of the 11 ever speak of again? Stay close. This story deserves your time. Now let me take you back to the beginning. Not years back. Just hours. That same morning, Bruce Lee woke up in his Kowloon Tong home with a feeling he could not shake. Something was off. He had been training harder than ever. His body was a weapon tuned to the finest edge. The films were making him the most famous face in Asia. His philosophy of Jeet Kune Do was changing how people thought about fighting. He was not just a martial artist. He was becoming an idea. But the red envelope had arrived 3 days earlier. No return address. No name. Just a location on the Kowloon docks and a single Chinese character brushed in black ink. The character meant witness. Nothing else. Bruce showed it to no one. He told no one. And that was the first sign that something inside him already understood what this was. Now here is the thing. Bruce Lee was not a man who avoided confrontation. He welcomed it. When other martial artists challenged him publicly, he met them. When Western fighters dismissed Chinese martial arts, he proved them wrong with his hands. He did not hide. He did not negotiate. He showed up. But this invitation was different. There was no challenger named. No style declared. No terms. Just a place and a time. And that single word. Witness. He spent the day at Golden Harvest Studios. Filming. Running fight choreography. Laughing with the crew. To everyone around him, it was a normal day. But twice he paused mid-scene and stared at nothing. The director called his name. Bruce snapped back. Smiled. Kept working. But his hands were restless. He kept opening and closing his fists like a man testing whether his body still belonged to him. By evening, he drove home. Ate dinner with Linda and the children. Played with Brandon on the floor. Read Shannon a short story before bed. Normal. All of it normal. But after the house went quiet, he did something he had not done in years. He sat alone in his study and opened a small wooden box he kept on the top shelf. Inside was a piece of cloth. Old. Frayed. Stained with something dark. He held it for a long time. Then he folded it carefully and placed it in his jacket pocket. Believe me, that piece of cloth matters. You will understand why soon enough. At 11 that night, he left the house. No note. No explanation. He drove his Mercedes through the wet streets of Kowloon toward the docks. The roads were nearly empty. The harbor lights reflected off the windshield. He parked 2 blocks from the address and walked the rest of the way. The warehouse was old. Industrial. The kind of building that had seen 100 different purposes and remembered none of them. A single door stood open. Light came from inside. Not bright. Just enough to see. Bruce paused at the entrance. He was not afraid. That is important to understand. Bruce Lee did not experience fear the way most people did. But he experienced recognition. He could feel when a situation had weight. When the air carried something heavier than weather. He stepped inside. And what he saw stopped him cold. 11 men. Seated. Silent. Some of them he knew by reputation. Some by face. One he had fought years ago and never spoken of since. These were not fans. These were not critics. These were the most dangerous martial artists alive. And they were all looking at one thing. The man standing in the center of the chalk circle. Waiting. No one spoke. Not a single one of the 11 offered a greeting or explanation. The silence was the instruction. Bruce understood. He removed his jacket, folded it once, and set it on the ground near the door. The piece of cloth stayed in the jacket pocket. He walked toward the circle. Now get this. Bruce Lee had fought dozens of men in private challenges. He had faced boxers, wrestlers, karate masters, and street fighters. He had ended most of those fights in seconds. His speed was not human. His reflexes operated on a level that made trained killers look slow. He knew this about himself. Not from arrogance, from evidence. So when he stepped into the chalk circle and took his stance, he expected the usual. Read the opponent. Find the flaw. Exploit it. Finish. The nameless fighter stood 6 feet away. Average height. Lean. His posture was strange. Not a fighting stance exactly. More like a man standing in a field waiting for weather to change. His arms hung loose. His feet were shoulder-width apart. His eyes were open but unfocused, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Bruce moved first. He threw a straight lead, the fastest punch in his arsenal. A strike that had dropped men before they knew it was coming. It missed. Not blocked. Not deflected. The man simply was not where the punch arrived. He had shifted. Not stepped. Not dodged. Shifted. Like smoke rearranging itself around an object. Bruce recovered instantly and followed with a side kick aimed at the midsection. The man caught his ankle. Not grabbed it. Caught it. The way you might catch a ball tossed to you by a child. Casual. Easy. And then he released it. Did not counter. Did not attack. Just let go and returned to his original position. The 11 did not react. No gasps. No murmurs. They had seen this before. Bruce reset. He circled. The man did not move. Bruce feinted left. Nothing. Feinted right. Nothing. The man did not track Bruce's movement with his eyes. He tracked it with his body. His weight shifted before Bruce committed to a direction. As if he already knew. This is where it turns. Bruce launched a combination. Jab, cross, hook, low kick. For strikes in under 2 seconds. Every single one technically perfect. The kind of combination that would have overwhelmed any fighter on the planet. The man avoided all 4. Not with blocks. Not with parries. He moved through the gaps between the strikes. He found the spaces where Bruce's hands were not. And after the final kick passed, the man placed one hand flat on Bruce's chest and pushed. Bruce stumbled backward. 2 full steps. The push was not hard. It did not hurt. But the message was clear. I was inside your range. I could have ended you. I chose not to. For the first time in Bruce Lee's adult fighting life, he had no answer. His system did not work. His speed was not enough. His timing, his centerline theory, his trapping, his interception. None of it applied. This man did not fight within any system Bruce could identify. And you cannot counter what you cannot name. One of the 11 shifted in his seat. An old man, the oldest in the room. He leaned forward slightly and placed both hands on his knees. That was all. But Bruce noticed. And the old man noticed that Bruce noticed. Then something unexpected happened. The nameless fighter stepped back. He lowered his arms. He bowed his head slightly. Not in respect. In patience. He was giving Bruce a moment. A pause. A breath. The warehouse went quiet again. The harbor sounds outside faded to nothing. For a brief second, everything was still. Almost peaceful. Like the fight was already over. Like the worst had passed. It had not. The nameless fighter attacked. No warning. No shift in posture. No telegraph. One moment he was still. The next his fist was an inch from Bruce's throat. Bruce pulled back just enough to survive it. The knuckles grazed his neck. He felt the heat of the strike pass his windpipe. A half-second slower and the fight would have ended right there. This was the reset. Everything before had been a test. The man had been measuring Bruce. Learning his timing. cataloging his reactions. The calm, the bow, the pause. All of it was strategy. And now the real fight had begun. The man came forward with strikes Bruce could not classify. They were not punches. They were not palm strikes. They were not elbows. They were something between all of them. Each one arrived from an angle that did not exist in any system Bruce had studied. And he had studied them all. Bruce blocked one. The impact ran through his forearm and into his shoulder like a steel rod had been driven through the bone. He blocked another. Same result. His left arm went numb from the elbow down. These were not ordinary strikes. The man was generating force from somewhere Bruce could not see. No hip rotation. No weight shift. Just contact and devastation. Believe me, Bruce Lee had been hit before. He had trained with some of the hardest hitters in the world. But this was different. This man's power did not come from muscle or technique. It came from something structural. Something hidden inside the movement itself. Bruce tried to clinch, to close the distance and neutralize the striking. The man let him in, then twisted his body in a way that sent Bruce spinning sideways. Bruce hit the concrete floor with his shoulder. Hard. The chalk line smeared under his body. He got up fast. He always got up fast. But his breathing had changed. It was shorter, sharper. His ribs on the left side were wrong. Not broken, but wrong. Something had shifted when he hit the ground. Every breath now cost him. 2 of the 11 exchanged a glance. Brief, controlled, but it carried weight. They had seen fighters crumble at this point. They were watching to see if Bruce would be the next. Here is where Bruce made his mistake. He went back to what he knew. He reset his stance, centered his weight, returned to the structure of Jeet Kune Do. The intercepting fist, the philosophy he had built with his own hands. He trusted it. He believed that if he executed it perfectly, the system would save him. It did not. The nameless fighter read the stance like a sentence in a book. He stepped inside Bruce's lead foot, neutralized the center line, and delivered 3 strikes to Bruce's body so fast that the sounds blended into one. Bruce folded. Not all the way, but enough. His knees bent. His guard dropped for half a second. The man stepped back again, waiting, patient, giving Bruce another chance to stand. But this time the message was different. The first pause had said, "I could have ended you." This pause said something worse. It said, "Your best is not enough." And we both know it. The old man in the front row placed one hand flat on his own chest. A gesture, small, almost invisible, but Bruce saw it. And something in that gesture cracked him open. Not his body, his mind, his certainty, the thing that had carried him through every fight, every challenge, every doubter. The absolute belief that his way was the right way. That belief was now on the floor next to the smeared chalk line. And the fight was not over. Bruce stood, slowly this time, not because his body was broken. It was damaged, yes, ribs aching, left arm still half numb. But that was not what slowed him. What slowed him was the war happening behind his eyes. The war between who he had been and who he needed to become in the next 30 seconds to survive. He looked at the nameless fighter. Really looked. Not at his stance. Not at his position. Not at his hands or feet or shoulders. Bruce looked at the empty space around the man. The space between intention and action. And something unlocked. Now here is the thing. Every great fighter reaches a wall. A place where skill alone cannot carry them. Most fighters hit that wall and break. They go backward. They repeat. They cling. But a rare few hit that wall and do something else entirely. They let go. Bruce Lee let go. He dropped his stance. Not into another stance. Into nothing. His hands came down. His weight settled. His knees softened. He stopped being a fighter. He stopped being Jeet Kune Do. He stopped being Bruce Lee the martial artist. He became just a man. Standing. Breathing. Present. The nameless fighter tilted his head. For the first time, something changed in his expression. Not concern. Not fear. Recognition. He saw what Bruce was doing. And he knew what it meant. Bruce moved. But it was not a technique. It was not a strike or a kick or a combination. It was movement, pure, unfiltered. His body responded to the moment without a system telling it how. His hand rose because it needed to rise. His foot shifted because the floor asked it to. There was no name for what he did. There was no style. He closed the distance. The nameless fighter struck. A straight shot aimed at Bruce's sternum. The kind of blow that had folded him minutes ago. But this time Bruce was not where the strike expected him to be. He had not dodged. He had not blocked. He had simply changed. The geometry of his body was wrong for the attack. Wrong in the right way. The fist passed through empty air and Bruce was already inside. His palm found the man's chest. Not a strike. Placement. His other hand found the man's shoulder. And then Bruce did something no one in that room had ever seen. He redirected the man's own force back through his body. Not with technique. With listening. He felt where the man's weight wanted to go and he helped it get there. Faster than the man intended. The nameless fighter hit the ground. Silence. Total silence. The 11 did not breathe. The man lay on his back for 2 full seconds. Then he stood. Brushed the chalk dust from his arms. And for the first time, he smiled. He came again. Faster now. Harder. 3 attacks in rapid sequence. Each one more dangerous than anything he had thrown before. Bruce answered each one from that same empty place. No system. No style. No name. Just response. Just truth. He moved like water filling cracks in stone. He struck like a branch snapping in wind. Nothing planned. Everything necessary. The final exchange lasted less than 10 seconds. Bruce intercepted a strike, redirected the man's balance, and placed a single knuckle against the man's throat. Not a punch. A point. A period at the end of a sentence. The nameless fighter stopped. He looked down at the knuckle resting against his windpipe. He looked up at Bruce, and he bowed. A real bow. Deep. Slow. The kind of bow you give to something you have never seen before. If you have stayed with this story until now, you understand something most people never will. Do me a small kindness. Subscribe. Not because I am asking. Because this story is not over yet. And what comes next matters more than the fight itself. The 11 rose from their seats. One by one. Not applauding. Not speaking. Just standing. The old man in the front row was the last to rise. He looked at Bruce with an expression that carried decades of understanding. Then he nodded. Once. The nameless fighter walked to the far wall. He picked up a cloth bag, put it over his shoulder, and left through a side door without a word. No name exchanged. No rematch offered. No history given. He came. He fought. He bowed. He disappeared. Bruce never saw him again. None of the 11 ever identified him publicly. And in the years that followed, not one of them spoke about that night to anyone outside that room. Bruce stood alone in the chalk circle for a long time. His ribs throbbed. His left arm was coming back to life in painful waves. His knuckles were raw from the concrete floor. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the silence inside him. The old noise was gone. The constant calculation. The measuring. The proving. For the first time in as long as he could remember, his mind was not running. The old grandmaster approached him. He moved slowly. The weight of his years was visible in every step. He stopped in front of Bruce and said 5 words. Just 5. In Cantonese. Bruce understood them immediately. The old man said, "Now you have no style." Bruce nodded. The old man turned and walked away. The others followed. One by one they left through the main door. No farewells. No ceremony. The warehouse emptied in under a minute. And then Bruce was alone. He walked to his jacket, picked it up, reached into the pocket and pulled out the piece of cloth. He unfolded it and held it under the light. It was a strip torn from a training uniform. Old, faded, stained with sweat and something darker. It had belonged to his teacher. IP Man Bruce had carried it for years. A reminder of where he came from. A connection to the lineage that shaped him. He looked at it for a long time. Then he folded it again and placed it back in his pocket. He did not throw it away. That is important. He did not reject where he came from. He simply stopped letting it decide where he was going. Bruce drove home through the empty streets. The harbor was still. The city was asleep. He parked in his driveway and sat in the car for 10 minutes without moving. Just breathing. Feeling the new quiet in his body. The ribs hurt. The arm ached. But underneath the pain there was something else. Space. Room. Like a house that had been full of furniture for years and someone had finally cleared it out. He went inside. Linda was asleep. The children were asleep. The house was exactly as he had left it. Nothing had changed. And everything had changed. In the weeks that followed, people noticed. His students said his movement was different. Softer. Less defined. Harder to predict. His sparring partners said fighting him felt like fighting smoke. Directors on set said his screen presence had deepened. He was more still. More present. More dangerous in his calm than he had ever been in his speed. He never wrote about that night. He never filmed it. He never named the fighter or the 11. But if you read his notes from that period, if you study the way his philosophy shifted in those final months, you can see the seam, the place where the old Bruce ended and something new began. Every master eventually meets the one fight that strips him down to nothing. That is what I told you at the start. But here is the part one did not tell you. The stripping down is not the destruction. It is the gift. Because only when everything is taken away do you discover what was always underneath. And what was underneath Bruce Lee was not a style, not a system, not a philosophy. It was just a man, awake, present, free. And that was more dangerous than anything the world had ever seen.